So now we're going to look at the second installment of something called the Duras Gambit. Up until 6 months ago, I didn't even know what this gambit was called. I just knew that it was a strange kind of opening that made no sense to play. However, I've grown to like the Duras Gambit for a number of reasons. I would hesitate to play it in a very highly rated, long, serious game um, because part of the charm of the Duras Gambit is that it uses up your opponent's time trying to figure out what is so hideously wrong about it. And the fact is that it's some sort of hybrid Latvian type gambit where the e pawn doesn't get moved in a normal way for black. So that creates some advantages for black, and it stumps white, and white beats his head in trying to figure out how to bust this thing, and it's very difficult to bust, especially like right away. There are even variations where black gets forced to move his king over to the queen side, just marching it over there. And yet black still, according to the computer, is within one in the game. So this is a difficult type game that somebody like Steinitz might have tried to play, and it has its uses. So just in terms of standard development, when you play the Duras Gambit, you want to develop quickly. You want to open the F file, obviously, which white's going to probably do for you, and use it while attempting to survive. So um, it's a very double-edged. White can attack you very easily, and yet what you're going to try to do is turn that around and use the F file yourself. And this is a very bad opening, as I mentioned, and it's second in idiocy only to the England Gambit, which I also play, which is almost certainly losing to the proper player, somebody using a machine against you. All you have to do is make a minor error, and just logical moves are going to crush you. So beware that these are unsound gambits, and they're not for serious long-term play. However, if somebody is really, really unfamiliar with that sort of thing, it can have a very insulting effect on a much higher rated opponent. And in some cases, higher rated opponents think that you're just an idiot and that you played something by mistake. So then they feel obligated to crush you, and that's playing into your hands. So in this kind of gambit, you're looking for sacks on h3 and f3. That's what I do anyway. But given the fact that the f file is open and you're going to try to recover this pawn, it makes a certain amount of sense to be able to do that. So without further ado, we're going to head toward the game itself. Once again, these are 2100 and up players. That's what I've basically vowed to put on here. And look, the computer thinks c5 is the best move. That follows modern theory. So now we move f5. And as you can see, after the simple capture, this engine says we're down 1 1/4. That's really, really bad. So here's the capture. This is pretty much a forced response to prevent queen to h5 followed by mate, or something close to it. And now there are a variety of things that white does in response to this. Just normal play works pretty well. So let's see what white does. This is a move I'd say I get about 75% of the time, just d4. It does make a certain amount of sense, and we respond d5. Now look at the ugly, horrible white squared weaknesses black has. Furthermore, black should be glad to trade off his white squared bishop because he's about to have a bad bishop there as well. Now this is something I don't understand at all. The engine wants, I guess, another pawn or something on a white square with bishop to b5 check for white. So white is often very tempted to do this as well, which is simply to protect that pawn. Why allow black to just take bishop takes f5, and yet people do. And so when white does this, I immediately attack the d pawn. The computer programs like you to play e6 and challenge it, then recapture with the bishop, or not recapture with the bishop, depending on how fast white can castle, because you can delay that capture. So now, as you can see, the computer considers this imprecise and not even correct, actually. So white varies for the first time. He gets this idea in his head that he's going to overprotect that pawn, which doesn't even need overprotection. So He's decided he's going to move that knight to g3, apparently. I can't figure out why else it's there. Um, so now we move e5. So there are two choices. You can move e5 or e6 depending on the situation, depending on the threats and the types of things you have available. Um, Often d takes e5 is the best move for white, and just leaving that pawn there on f5 is a cramping effect. In this case, the computer's recommending an en passant capture, which he does. Now, if the e-file were open, there is a small danger, like if the knight were on f3, of just taking this right away because of pins, queen to e2 followed by castles and then knight to g5 and things like that, and disrupting the black castling process. And in fact, the computer right now says that black would be well advised to just play bishop to d6 to get in kingside castling soon. So I take it, which is imprecise according to the computer. And now, of course, it looks as if he can move knight to f4, which is what the computer's recommending, which I don't really mind that much. So, I hate to say it, but it allows me to do a variety of things, and he doesn't take advantage of that possibility. And so I prevent that hop, well, at least somewhat. Now the computer wants it to happen again. So what's interesting about this, and something I don't truly understand, is that white's going to move g3 here. And this is a strong player with a high rating. So, what's he moving g3 for? He's scared of something. Maybe it's this big, maybe he's had bad sacks like in his past. Maybe he recognizes one of my handles. Like he thinks what's coming is bishop takes h2 check, knight hops out check, and then queen to h5. I guess that could be played, but as long as his knight's there on e2, it seems like he's got lots of ways of defending, and because he can move a bishop out to f4 and cover his h2 square. So he moves there, preventing any shenanigans on my part, and I simply castle. Now I've got what I call a home free type situation. I'm very, very happy with what I've got. I'm only half a pawn down. I have full development, better development than white has. White has a compromised looking kingside. I've got a rook on an open f-file, and I'll play this all day. So now it wants me to move bishop to h3, and I decline to do so. I'm kind of a development person, so I like developing, and I would prefer, when he moves his rook, to have something to oppose him on the e-file. And he wants him to hop out and do something about my d6 bishop, or move f3, and he's decided to pin me. And in pinning me, what we have is a move there that takes a bishop off a perfectly good diagonal and puts it on a completely worthless diagonal, because there's no point in, if he were going to get a knight to e5 or something, there'd be some point to that move. But I don't know what it's there for or why it's there, so it just seems to me it's a bad move. So, kicking it, allows me to protect my d-pawn happily. And I think kicking it probably, in retrospect, was kind of a weak move on my part. Let's see what the computer says. It just wants me to move bishop to h3. There was no real need to kick that. And I'm happy opening a file. He preempts me by moving rook to e1. And now what we have is bishop to g4, the number one computer move. Yeah, now f3 is not available to him, so we're going to start playing on these white squares. And now that his white squared bishop is gone, which was desperately needed to defend his kingside, he's left with a knight trying to move somewhere where it can defend all these squares. And it's fairly awkward. The computer already wants him to move queen to d3, which apparently he did. And now knight to h5 is recommended. It's interesting. But once again, I'm just developing. I have a small advantage here. So bishop to f4 was the right move. And now bishop to f5 is the right move. So I didn't move bishop to f5. I moved there, which gives us an even game. All he has to do is take and probably... which is what happened. It recommended rook takes, I notice. And now it says he can play queen takes a6, but he checks. I move in the corner. By the way, I'm not worried about any of this. I'm playing for a huge kingside attack here. It doesn't matter to me. You know, this is an even looking game. Even if he takes a pawn or two, I'm set. Wants him to move queen to c4, and he moved the mysterious move h4. Interesting. He wants to put his king on h2 as a defense. So he sees me playing bishop to f3, followed by queen to h3, and he wants to stop that with his king. And here's what happens. He goes there, and now I move queen to g4. And here is where I believe that, since this was a rapid game, I had much better moves than I played, and I blundered. But he's down 8 at this point. His strategy of moving his king there is a failure waiting to happen, because right now I'm threatening queen takes h5 check, which is followed by mate shortly. So he's got to prevent that somehow, and there are a few ways to do it. So it says bishop to g5 and letting me have his knight, or in his case he hops the knight out. Now obviously the right move is rook takes. Rook takes followed by a series of checks. Rook takes stronger than bishop takes, but if I know myself, I played bishop takes. So, you know, it's a move order issue, because eventually what's going to happen is it's going to be taken off anyway. Now when he takes back, which he can't do, he gets checked, and then he gets checked again. The game's over. So this is desperation at this point. Now he's a rook down. Now it says the crushing shot is e3, undermining everything. So I back up. I see the computer temporarily found a mate there. I'm happy building this position up. And as you can see, you know, as I've talked before about the fact that I'm not too worried when I'm up something like 10 about, you know, the perfection of what happens with these mating situations. Now rook to h3 is pretty much an unstoppable threat. So he has to take the rook according to the computer. Instead he moves where the game is over in 2. So I believe he just resigned at this point because it's made in 2. So this was the Duras Gambit, and this was attacking on the f-file, and this was a few minor mistakes by White. White was a strong player who wasn't playing very strongly. So this is the end of our Duras Gambit number 2.